Welcome everybody. This is our Wednesday hub, the Earth Nouveau Zoom, 2 hours later than normal. So for those of you who've managed to get in and join us, welcome. I'm really delighted. Again, we've got Johnathan Huet. Johnathan did our Winter Solstice celebration with us. Some of you here might well remember he did that for us. So I've asked him again today to come and lead our celebrations and meditation or whatever he's got for us. We haven't really talked about it, Johnathan, so it's a surprise for me too. But Johnathan is really a Celtic bard, a storyteller. He's a master of tree folklore and many other things, which we've put in the introduction there. You can read about Johnathan, and perhaps, Johnathan, before we start, you just give yourself a little introduction too. So he's going to take us through the next, I think, hour and a half, something like that, Johnathan. And then, and then, any questions afterwards, Johnathan's happy to answer them, just like we did before at the Winter Solstice. So on this, it's not just a day of balance, it's a whole week, I think, we look at the Spring Equinox energies for. So I'll hand this over to you, Johnathan. Thank you for coming and welcome.
Thank you, Laura. I'm wishing you all a warm Spring Equinox. The time of spring has come to us. I'm Johnathan. I'll probably, the session may be just under an hour, but then after that, I'm happy to then explore the themes that come from that. The first part will be an opening that Laura certainly will be very familiar with, because it's my daily practice, so I tend to use that as an opening for all my rituals. And then thought I would focus on connecting with the plants through the Earth Mother and connecting with the trees through the Earth Father, who I call the Dagda. So I will present that to you. What I would do is I would just do the ritual, I would do the chanting. Some of you have heard me before, so you know what I do. But please don't worry about not understanding or following the words. So, for instance, if I use quite a lot of poetry and prose, please don't feel like you have to fully be with me in understanding and remembering it all. It's really, the idea is for you just to give yourself permission to go into dream time. Maybe no loud snoring, but no, just to enter into that place of dream time. So for me, and you may all be different, I've studied many disciplines in my time, and it's fine. Some disciplines involve being upright and doing certain mudras in Hinduism, for instance, and so forth. But the way in which I work is we're connecting with our imagination. We're connecting with our inner worlds through our imagination. So there is no rules, if you want. There's no way of being. It's just about letting go. So the meditation that I do will involve visualizing, but at the same time, it's not about you needing to visualize. If that's not your skill, then it's perfectly okay for you just to sit back, listen to the words and just use whatever senses you use. So whether it's inner touch, inner smell, whatever it is, or if you're just sitting there in peace, then that seems a good thing to do. So please don't worry about anything like that. So I ask that you just go with it if you don't understand the words or what's happening. I often say, do not try to grasp the words with your mind, grapple with your intellect, or comprehend it with your ego. For we're entering into the womb of the earth and the stirrings of soul. So I hope that's okay. Obviously, while I'm doing the ritual and meditation, I won't be engaging with the chat. But if you want to ask questions afterwards, there'll be plenty of time for that. And if you want to pop them in the chat, I can always look at them towards the end. Okay. So can I invite you into the rich culture of the Celtic lands? The bards and the seers and the wrath of the gods. Sacrifices, spells, warriors, druids utter sacred lore, and goddess clothed in glamour galore. As she adorns the night sky, power of the moon, Finn returns, Bridget blooms, not a wilting flower, a power this hour for her return. May we call to the old Celtic lands and the ancient stories once told. And although we're tapping into the Celtic world, we're also tapping into what was before that. So as a Celt, I'm going to the land and I'm connecting with the ancestry of the land as far back as I can possibly imagine in my DNA. And for me, it's about starting with the Earth Mother. Now, I use the word mother and father and male and female, but I use them as polarities within us, both within the male and the female. And I particularly like to term Earth Mother because often God is seen as male, so it's lovely to see God as a woman, which is very much in sync with the Celtic path. So we call to the Earth Mother, for she is the sun and she is the moon, she is the stars, she is the trees, she is the woods. She has her feet far down among the roots and trees, and stars thickening in her hair as they gather in the vastness and blackness of the sky on a night of frost. Her form fills all the world where wisdom dwells. But she is sorrowful and terrible, for the hearts of men know her no more in her ancient loveliness. She loveth loneliness, solitude is her breath. She is queen of all things, on the earth and in the sea and in the white palaces of the stars built upon the dark walls of time above the abyss. She is Cora, the Celtic world serpent. Her movement is the triple spiral of all creation. She is Danu, Bowen, Bridget. Eru Bambo Fola, I seek the land of Erin. Eru Bambo Fola, I seek the land of Erin. Fruitful be her seas, perpetually green her forest. I feel her in my bones, I feel her in my blood. Feel her in my bones, I feel her in my blood. O Danu, soul of the ancient mysteries, who wanders forever in loveliness under the canopy of heaven, wrapped in her mantle of bluest ether, and the vision of her calls every human heart. O Danu, her shadow is the forgotten mysteries, and lives in the sadness of the Celtic twilight tales, when hearts wake again to a longing for the forbidden lands, or for the shining hosts of the She, or for the caves of the hoary sleepers. Ero Bambo Fola, I seek the land of Erin. Ero Bambo Fola, I seek the land of Erin. Fruitful be her seas, perpetually green her forest. Feel her in my bones, I feel her in my heart. Feel her in my bones, I feel her in my heart. So this is the time of spring, and the green world is definitely starting to awaken. So if you do get an opportunity to go outside, some of you are not from this country, but certainly in the country where I am right now in Britain, we have what we call the cherry plums, which are the first indicator that start to come out about mid-February, and then the blackthorn will come, and the willow, and various plants will start to flower as the season progresses. So personally, when I celebrate this time of year, I'm thinking of the green world awakening and unfolding. And there are 4 main goddesses that I connect with at this time, which we'll be chanting to in a little while. And they are what I think of as creative goddesses. So Bamba, Donu, Downey, and Marka. And I'm going to come back to those. Obviously, expecting you to know all of those goddesses, but we'll just chant to them, and you can see how that feels for you, and we can talk about it afterwards. But before I begin anything, I always call to the elements, And indigenous belief, I think it's really important to connect the inner with the outer, to really bring it all into being, and to make sure that we're grounded in this world first. And I call to the elements through 4 key male deities. So again, it's that male and female within us all, that inner outer within us all. So I will start by lighting a candle, saying a traditional prayer that's been translated from Irish Gaelic, and then we will invoke the Earth Mother and the Earth Father to connect with this green world awakening. So through stone and metal, I induce the memories of Earth. Through spark and cloth, I ignite the fire of life. Through tinder and wood, I set my heart ablaze. And through ember and ash, I sustain the essence of all of life. So I'm just lighting a candle. You won't see me do that. And this signifies us going into that more oblique soul awareness, that side of us that we don't always acknowledge. I rise this evening through the strength of heaven, light of sun, radiance of moon, strength, splendor of fire, speed of lightning, strength of wind, stability of earth, and firmness of rock. I'm of the 9 elemental forms: bone of rock, flesh of earth, hair of plant, blood of water, breath of wind, eyes of sun, mind of moon, brain of cloud, and head of sky. So if you know your directions, you can tune into those as I call to them. If you don't know your directions, just sit back and just be with what's happening. It's not imperative. So I'm going to call to the east, which is actually behind me, and I call to Angus Org, and I feel him on the wind. And this is what we're doing. Even if you don't know who Angus Org is, you can just feel the wind. And we've had some strong winds lately, so know that there's a voice in the wind, and it speaks of birth, of song. And this is the direction where we focus on spring and dawn and of youth this time of year. It's also the place of the sword of Noada from the city of Findias, guarded by the poet Asias for justice and peace. Blessed be. If you want to repeat blessed be after me, even if I don't hear you, you're very welcome to do that. So then we go to the south, and the south where I am in this country is where the sun is at its most potent. So in the south, we think of the power of the sun, Lulan Fada, but if you want to think of the power of the sun and whatever deity you associate with the sun, and just feel that passion. It's of passion, it's of war, it's of midday, it's of summer, and it's of adolescence, so that more agitated energy, that heat, that passion of summer. And here we have the spear of Lu in the city of Gorias, guarded by the poet Esras for courage and healing. Blessed be. And then we come to the west, and where I am, the west is actually in front of me, so it's as if I'm looking at all of you. And in the west, we call to the keeper of the west, who's Ma'anin MacLear. And here we can think, if we don't know who the deity is, just think of the sea, think of the rippling waves, the crashing waves and the rippling waters, and how the sea speaks to us. Of sorrow, of dream, of autumn, of twilight. and of maturity. And here we have the cauldron of the Dagda from the city of Morias, protected by the poet Semias, and this is for abundance and hospitality, and where we always offer that to all strangers, all nationalities, all people, all creeds. Blessed be. And then finally we arrive at the north, and the keeper of the north, it's to the side of me here, is the Dagda, and we can feel his form, see his form in the landscape. So again, it's the deity that you associate, that you can see in the landscape, in the big rocks, in the trees, that very male, foundational sort of energy. And those permanent, almost permanent features, they are ever changing, but we are so slowly we don't see them. They speak to us of death, of life, of old age. So we're thinking of midnight and of winter. And the time of death is the newness, is the new year, is the new beginnings. And here we have the Leofel stone of destiny. And that is from the city of Faias, guarded by the poet Morfisa. And it represents truth and honour. And then into the centre, wherever you are, herein lies the mysteries of the land, the keepers of traditions, the makers of kings, the honour of maidens, the contract of humanity, the gift of life, the destiny of soul. And now we're opening a doorway, and we open this doorway, this is actually happening. We're going into those unseen worlds. These deities, these beings, these elements, they exist. They're part of who we are, and they're also their own selves too, and they're there around us. So you may get a sense of, you may already be in touch with that, of your guides, of someone that's with you. It may be an animal, it may be an ancestor, but just getting a sense of that unseen world all around us. Blessed be. So although the spring is the time for us to get out and explore, it's also always a time of reflection. So Indigenous people, even when they're active, are probably more reflective and less busy, or should I say those living on the land are the same than we are in our modern lives. Because even when we're preparing for the festivals, when we're gathering our fruits or preparing the soil, we're always thinking about all of the seasons and all of the gatherings and all that we need to do. So we're really thinking of the awakening of the green world. So I'm going to do a couple of chants. The first chant is going to be dedicated to the Earth Mother and the different plants. I'm going to say quite a few plant names, but it doesn't matter if you don't know the plants. Just tune into any plants that you wish, and it's more about the qualities rather than, you know, the detail. And then we're going to go into the Earth Father, and we're going to connect to the trees. And again, I'll be using names of trees that are native to my land. So I'm native to the South Downs, which is a place of chalk, a place of flint, a place of many meadow flowers and old woods. And the woods that naturally grow on the downs tend to be things like juniper and yew. And then we have some lovely deciduous lowland woods which are mixed with all types of species. So all I can do is convey my own land to yours, and we can connect with that. So when we're connecting and working with the land here, ultimately we're connecting all lands and all places. So if you want to visualize a piece of land that you treasure, one that you can physically still go to, I think's good, but it doesn't matter if it is a memory of one you can't, but ideally one you can visit regularly, one perhaps you could be a caretaker of this year. Because I think as the green world unfolds, it's really great to start thinking of that connection, noticing the plants, noticing the trees, noticing the real magic which is actually in the physical, in the fact of what nature does for all of us. That's the true magic, is the fact that plants grow and do all these wonderful things, which we can always discuss later. So we're going to chant to the goddesses I spoke about: Bamba, Donu, Downy, and Maka. So the words are fairly simple if you did want to join in. All they are Earth, Mother, connect us to the plants, connect us to the soil, sea and sky. Earth, Mother, connect us to the plants, connect us to the soil, sea and sky. Oh, Earth, Mother, connect us to the plants, connect us to the soil, sea and sky. So visualize your own piece of land, or land that you know well, and just send it that love and connect with the plants there at this time of year. Earth Mother, connect us to the plants, connect us to the soil, sea and sky. Oh, great Earth Mother, connect us to the plants, connect us to the soil, sea and sky. Amba, Doni, Downy, Marker. Damba, Doni, Downy, Marker. Bamba, Doni, Downy, Marker. Nettle and Dock give true nutrition. Avens, Alehoof, soothes our constitution. Plantain, South Hill, Yarrow Herb, Robert, heals our wounds, makes us whole. Chickweed, crosswort, cleavers, cowslip, ointment from the skin, relief from within. Dandelion and burdock purify our blood. Wood sage for our appetite, foxglove for our heart, archangel for stress, it gives a good rest. Agrimony, speedwell, willow herb longer, clear our lungs, cough no longer. Ancient Mother, connect us to the plants, connect us to the soil, sea and sky. Oh, ancient Mother, connect us to the plants, connect us to the soil, sea and sky. So staying with that piece of land. If it is a treed landscape, you can connect with the trees. If it's not, you maybe can bring an element of a treed landscape into your vision. If you're not visual, just know that it's there, but really sort of tune into the trees, how much more throbbing and thrilling and full of life they are compared to human structures. Incredible beings that bring up iron from the soil to feed the plants in the sea, that take oxygen from the air to make it available to us, that take carbon and put it down into the earth, provide us with all that we need. So we're going to call to the trees and connect with them through the Dagda. Great God Dagda, connect us to the trees, connect us to the soil, connect us to the soil, sea and sky. Good God Dagda, connect us to the trees, connect us to the soil, sea and sky. Good God Dagda, Father of many, parentage of the she, all-knowing noble, spirit of the greenwood, shout at us. Power of the soft brown earth, comfort us. May the strength rising from the roots of the trees transport us to the bright realms, acting as pillars of hope. Alder, ash, asping, black poplar, bird, wild cherry and beech. Common and sessile oak, box, crab apple, silver, downy birch and maple. large leaf lime, midland and common thorn, white beam, wild service and rowan. Pine, strawberry tree, holly, hornbeam, hazel, juniper, elm. Crack, white, bay, goat, willow, Plymouth, wild pear and yew. Bear, Louis, Theron, Salu, neon. Hua, lure, chinu, coal, quirt. Moon, gort, neartle, strath, wish. May we all be as steady as a tree, serving all beings and taking only that which we need to sustain our lives. Envelop us in the knowledge of the greenwood. Teach us to have a compassionate heart and to truly love all souls equally as one. Great God Dagda, connect us to the earth, connect us to the trees, connect us to the soil, connect us to the sky, connect us to the fields, connect us to ourselves. So if you just stay with that piece of land that you love, that you nurture, wherever you are in the world. And I have a bowl here, you won't be able to see it, but there's a bowl here of hazelnuts. And you could offer anything that you please, but right now, obviously, while you're at home, you can just offer your heart, which is far more important. And offer it to the spirits of that land. So as the green world awakens at the spring, just offer your respect and your honour, an acknowledgement that the land is alive. In this tradition we call to the she, we see the land and its forms as the she. How beautiful they are, the lordly ones, who live in the hills, in the hollow hills. They have faces like flowers, and their breath is a wind that stirs amid grasses filled with white clover. Their limbs are more white than shafts of moonshine. They are more fleet than a marsh wind. They laugh and are glad and terrible when their lances shake and glitter. Every green reed quivers. So just stay with that imagery. It doesn't matter if your land is a park or in a built-up area, or whether it's an expansive wilderness. Just really be with the features. To really get a sense of entering it. What's it doing at the moment? What plants are starting to grow as the soil warms? And then we're going to get a sense of going into that land, so going down into it, a feeling of going down but into the landscape. Now that point of entry for me is a well, but for you it could be a pool of water, it could just be a hatchway or doorway. But as I describe the well and I describe the trees that are around the well, you can just go with whatever imagery fits for you, and whatever's right for you, so don't ever try and force it. And if you're not a visual person, just blend into the landscape and just take whatever feelings and thoughts are happening. So we're going now to the centre, For me, in the east, from that centre, I have flat plains and wetlands and winds. And then in the south here, I have the sea and the cliffs. In the west, I have a more undulating landscape, more rocky, milder. And in the north, it becomes more mountainous or more hilly and colder. And then I'm in the centre of my land. I'm part of the land. The food I eat, the water I drink, it comes up from that land and from that landscape. For me, it's Conda's Well, which is at the foot of a mountain ash. And those who gaze therein, if they find a guide, may be led to the fountain of perpetual youth. So wherever your entry point is, you may want to get a sense of someone being with you. It could be the guardian of this land. It could just be an animal. The animals are very important. They know more than we do about the land and the circle of life. And we're going to get a sense of going into that land. It's good to have a focus, so you may want to focus on what is it the land wishes to tell you, or how you can help it or heal it. And it may be something practical you obtain, like clearing some rubbish, or it may be something on a deeper level within you. But you could, if you frame some sort of question, some sort of purpose to connect with the land. And now we're going to enter the land, so whichever way you wish to go, whichever entry point you have, or just sit and know that it's happening. If you tune into the drum, don't worry about how I'm playing it or what I'm doing, just tune into the beats, between the beats, or just be there, allow it to blend and be with you. Don't worry about how long it's going on for or how I'm playing, just be with that sound. So begin to enter and get a sense of going down into the landscape. I'm going to count you down, and when I say the number 1, you'll then be in the landscape, and just take whatever impressions you have of it. So it may look exactly the same, it may be slightly different, because it's the inner vision of this landscape, but it will have ground, sky and so on. So 10, 9, 8. You're going deeper and deeper into yourself, into the landscape. 7, 6, 5. You're going deeper and deeper into the landscape. 4, 3, 2. You're going deeper and deeper into the landscape. And 1. Enter that landscape. Take whatever impressions you see, trees or plants, and as you explore it, you may wish to get a sense of a safe place, somewhere to settle and to connect. this land.
To the hidden ones, take me to the sheep, guardians of the land. Take me to the old ones, take me to the hidden ones, take me to the sheep, guardians of the land. Forth from his breast the old man drew a lute that once on a rowan tree grew. Speaking no words, he began to play over the hills and far away. Take me to the old ones, take me to the hidden ones, take me to the sheep, guardians of the land. Take me to the old ones, take me to the hidden ones, take me to the sheep, guardians of the land. And the moon came up, and the stars grew white, and the hills grew black in the bloom of the night. And I watched till the Death Star sank in the moon, and the moon made fled with her flitter my shoon. Take me to the old ones, take me to the hidden ones, take me to the sheep, guardians of the land. Then the shadow that lay on the moor side there rose up and shook his wild moss hair over the hills and far away. Oh, that was the tune I heard one day. Take me to the old ones, take me to the hidden ones, take me to the sheep, guardians of the land. Take me to the sheep, guardians of the land. Know that all you connect with here is benevolent. That everything here is to help the web of life. And just sit and be with that land. Connect with it. You may be able to make a commitment to seeing it through the different stages from spring to winter. If you can't manage that, just feel the memories and the connection to it right now, and offer whatever you can to the beings that are there to look after and nurture the land. Meditate. standing here in the deep brooding silence. All of creation seems motionless. But in the midst of this outer steadfastness, there is incessant change and motion. Insect swarms are dancing in the sunbeams. A cloud of witnesses telling nature's joy. Burrowing in the ground, diving and swimming. The plants are as busy as the animals. Every cell in a swirl of enjoyment. Humming like a hive. Singing the old new song of creation. Butterflies wavering overhead in wonderful profusion. And other beautiful winged people blessed birds, stirring and singing, sweetening the groves. Listen to the songs of the plants and trees and animals. Really listen and hear what they're telling you. Time when the land was being born, back to its infancy, and the first woman that stepped upon the land. We could call her Bamba. And the fiery magma deep in the earth is Cora, the serpent. As she stirs and moves, the first of creation starts to happen. The land folds to mountains, the plants begin to grow, and Bamba and her 50 women chant in praise of all that it gives. She turns again, just a slight flicker, and the waters rises, and Bamba goes down into the depths. But from death comes new life. And this is Donu, a giantess, mother of the race of the giants, the first inhabitants of creation. And some may judge them as being grotesque and strange and odd, but other of the giants were beautiful indeed, with fine hair and looks and incredibleness in every way. But they sought the deep salty seas and bleak islands in the west and the north. And they stayed. And then from the southwest of Kerry came Downey, and she brought peace and harmony and love to her, and the land rejoiced in her being. But her gentleness was not to be underestimated as she fought off the giants that pursued her. And then the land changed again, and this time from the north came Martha, on a purebred steed, on a chariot of fire, with a raven upon her shoulder, and the giants could not stop her. And as she reigned upon the land, she gave birth to the races, to the furbolgs, the furbullocks, that were of the soil and the earth, and could grow anything in all the barren places. She gave birth to Tuatha Danann, the she who knew all of the crafts and magic of the worlds, and then to the Britons who went off to Albion, and to the races beyond. Martha, the mother of all. And wherever your land is, you may know of other deities, or you may connect with other mothers of your races. But the further back we go is one common thread, that we are all the same. One common thread, that we're all of the earth and the soil. And as we take part in the creation of spring, come back to the simplicity of your own local place. And before you leave it, ask, what can I do to help this land? What can I do to help this land? Coming back from the depths of memory, just sit and be in your own piece of land, in your own inner world, knowing that this world is as real as any other. Knowing that everything has a subtle nature to its being. Although we have the incredible adamantine, titanic forces all around us, when we sit, we see the green grass, flowers, the winged people, maybe some animals. Sun has risen, spring has come. Feel your own energy within you rising as the sap does in the trees. Leave a gift by a tree or well or onto the grass. Honour the land in your own sweet way. And begin to come back, to come up the tunnel or whatever way you came in. To arrive back in your body, complete, all parts of you back into the room. Make sure your inner world is sealed. Your guide may well come back with you to hold you and just be. Feel that same energy right here in your home, in your own place. Knowing that experience does not need to leave you. Just become integrated into yourself. And just sit for a couple of minutes. In your own time, arrive back and slowly adjust your bodies, and in your own sweet time open your eyes and be fully grounded in this world. So just come back as slowly as you wish to. Just really ground yourself and make that distinction between your meditation and your physical reality, as well as integrating them, of course. Spring is here. Happy Spring Equinox.
Happy Spring Equinox. Jonathon, thank you so much. I personally really needed that. That really reconnected me with my roots and the land. And I've got a few questions, but if anyone else wants to make any comment on the meditation or how they felt, or if anybody had any experiences that they'd like to share with us.
It was fabulous, Jonathan, really fabulous. It just took me on so many journeys, in, out, up, down. It was, there was so much in that I could resonate with, and it was just so grounding and so earthy. And I loved the sentence that this space is as real as any other. If I take nothing else from what you did, I will remember that. Yeah.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you.
Lovely.
Yeah, I think in these days of all the fear coming out from the global narrative and all the thing with lockdown and everything else, this is a really important and very relevant, isn't it, to have these sort of ceremonies, Jonathon, like this. I know, it's taking us out of one world into another, but for me, it's taking us into the real world.
Yeah,
I think so, and I think also it feels like the older beliefs are more relevant today than ever, because it's kind of going back. We're exploring so much, aren't we, about gender and about equality and all these things, which are so very important. But I feel, and rightly or wrongly, but when you go back to the really old traditions, you get back to the raw elements, you move away from that, and you kind of are honouring the earth and each other as we are, and also the ecology side of it as well, which is very current for today. It's just so based on a knowledge of ecology. I mean, my personal feeling is that the ancestors would have known, our scientific conception of ecology and all the thing we know about the water cycle and the carbon cycles and photosynthesis. I feel like they would have known that even if they didn't use scientific terms, and it feels like it's present in those stories, that they understood that from death came new life and that everything was connected, as many of you guys probably are connected to as well. But I do feel that the older kind of systems, the indigenous systems, are kind of connected to now more appropriately than ever. That's my feeling. Yeah.
Yes, we've lost so many of those connections. And it's interesting how also the system in some ways has turned everything that we, probably everyone here, or we like to believe in, or we know, like the Shay or the giants who once walked on Earth, they've turned it all into legend. So that we can't, it makes it disconnected from us. In some ways, haven't they? They've taken that and made them stories rather than something that for me anyway.
It's real.
Yeah. Actually is real.
They took the real element out of it. And I think that's why that sentence, where Jonathon said this world is as real as any other, really stuck with me.
Yeah, and I was camping actually Friday night, and where I was, the wind was absolutely howling, and you could just hear all the voices on the wind, and it was just that real sense of. And when I got up in the morning, I was cold, I was a bit tired, and I needed to eat, and it was that sense of those sort of basic survival needs had to be taken care of. But at the same time, I feel like the practical, I think I said this in the last one, it feels like the practical is very in line with the creative as well. So when people kind of think of, I mean, at one time, the less enlightened anthropologist talked about the indigenous people being schizophrenic because they talked about different realities and things like this. But actually, they lived out in the wilds off of the land. They had to be very grounded and purposeful in their approach to life. But they also were aware of that connection and help they could obtain from the earth itself as a living being. I mean, it was...
And of course, they were so connected and so connected to all forms of life around them, which today would be analysed as schizophrenia, and talking to oneself or hearing one's voices. In a certain part of our reality today, it would be recognised as that. But I think, as you said earlier, people are beginning to realise that as we go back to the ancient wisdom and the ancient knowingness, it brings us closer to what's real as we go forward.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Hmm.
You
Is this
mentioned
how
the
you
fear
think?
bullock. Sorry, Laura.
Sorry?
Sorry, say
No,
that again.
When Jonathon was doing one of his in part of his song there, he mentioned the fear bullock, the Tuatha Dé Danann, and it was
Yes.
just when I was doing the piece on Bridget, they were very relevant, you know, in her story.
I don't know what you think, Mary, but I always think the Furbolg get a bit of a hard time because there's this concept of them being I feel connected to the soil and the earth, and you know, and them being made slaves, but I always feel like the stories kind of depict them maybe as slightly sinister at times. But I just have this sense that maybe it wasn't. There was this connection to the earth with them. I don't know.
I think they were a very special race or group of people, and they were brought to Greece to do some slavery there. But I think sometimes that happens to people who are quite advanced. They are put into slavery to shut them down.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just my opinion or my interpretation. It's not even an opinion, but it's just something that I've sort of from and they were sent out here to the Aran Islands off the west coast when the Tuatha Dé Danann came here. And I was saying the day we did the Bridget thing that you know, they couldn't understand that they were a race that looked different to the rest. They had blonde hair and blue eyes, and they were trying to measure the heads to see, you know, what was it about them that was kind of special or kind of different. But at that particular time, they only measured the male heads. They didn't measure the female. It didn't seem to be relevant. But that's neither here nor there, really. It was just when you mentioned them there in your, what would you call it, meditation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us who these
Sorry,
people are.
Laura, you had a question.
Who are these people? This race you're talking about?
So Mary's obviously very informed on it, but there's some.
Oh no,
the
I'm not. But I just know of them from, you know, doing a little bit of the ancient history, Jonathon. They were here way back, you know, in Bridget's time, Laura. They were kind of one of the, you know, there were other races, but there were some of the first races that we have written about in our legends, which is real, really. Like Bridget was involved with the Tuatha Dé Danann. She married into the Tuatha Dé Danann. And
what are they? Dé Danann?
They were a very famous group that they were like an army, I suppose, really. And she married into this group, and she, if you remember, I was telling you that one of her sons was killed on the battlefield, and she went out. She was so upset. She started to keen, and she was supposedly had started the original keeners here in Ireland, because people just didn't know how to show their emotions when somebody died, and she showed them how to be sad and how to cry and all of that.
Yeah. So Laura, my understanding is that there were several invasions coming into Ireland. What I feel with the myth also is it kind of points to a almost a creation story, not so much a cosmology because the land's already there, but there's different races of people coming in, and then either flood or plague is destroying those races, but the giants remain. The giants remain throughout. And it's, for me, again, Mary may have a different feeling with that, but it's almost like an evolution, ecological tale, I think, within that. So I find them very, very fascinating. And then from there you go to the Battle of Matura, and it kind of sets the scene for a lot of Irish mythology. So I think the Tuatha Dé Danann are often considered, they're almost, I would say, like the Olympian gods, aren't they? They're like the Parthian of the Celtic gods, if you want. So it's
Yes.
The thing with all of these, everything is sort of, it's an unseen world that's been, most of it's been put into myth. So for all of us here who know there's an unseen world, how do we take this that's been subjugated into myth, really. I'm not saying they're not lovely stories and everything, but how do we we pass on these lovely stories and so on to our children, because that's what we want to do. We're storytellers, we're the ancient ones. We want to relate all this to our children so they know. How do we take it beyond the myths so that they become living beings just on another timeline, if you like, so that children understand that there is an unseen world? Because this is part of, you know, what we're facing today, isn't it? People don't recognize that there is an unseen world. So
Yeah, I think for me, certainly, if as you're talking about children, and I certainly would have wanted this when I was a child, is I think it's important as children develop their own imagination, because obviously the first stories were just told by people connecting with their inner worlds. You know, there wasn't this kind of huge literacy, I don't know, library to draw from. They would have just told tales. So I think the tales that the children also are developing, like their invisible friend or an animal or even their toy, you know, to really say, I feel, to enable that to happen. So for instance, if I'm talking about the fact that there's a, you know, I love the fox and all and things like that, to actually enable that child to connect with that animal and to really take it on board as something that can protect them. So for instance, at night, if they're having nightmares or they're missing their parents, or even if something traumatic happens and they're separated, they can connect with that. And I think it's one of the real missing links in modern day. And I just know that that would have helped me so much to know that as a child, that we can connect with these beings and they're not sinister or going to harm us. And I think often in a lot of, I think it's indigenous tales all around the world, the child takes on a name or a quality of an animal as they grow up. And it's almost like that's their shield, their protector. And they come into that. So with Cucullin, it was the hounds. With there's a tale of Finn McCall with the wild cat or anyway, that sort of animal, um, and so on and so forth. So we kind of develop with that animal, and it stays with us and guides us. And I think today we often think, oh, well, you know, it's fantasy or whatever. Thank goodness for Philip Pullman for bringing it into the modern era, because I know some of the kids I've been working with, they're studying Philip Pullman at the moment, so they're very much connecting with what their animal would be, their demon. So I think it's really relevant for today, and I think so much of our fear is based within us. I mean, I know there's very real things, you know, like with lockdown and so on. Some people are really suffering in terms of they've got the physical illness and so on and so forth. But so many of us, it's our inner worlds that are suffering, isn't it? Through loss of contact, or through not having a regular job, or having too much of a job because we're working full out because we're on the front line. Whatever it is, it's that connecting. And I think that connecting with nature, with that slowliness, with that patience, with that gentleness. I have forgive me if I'm speaking for too long, but I have a very strong connection with the quality of gentleness. I think it's very underrated today, and I think there's a real strength in that. And I think we can feel very protected from connecting with these beings. And personally, I don't think it's a fantasy world. I think it's another world, and that's with us. So yeah, I don't know if I think I answered your question, but yeah, I think they're very
yes,
relevant. So I think it's telling those stories as living stories. You can now
yes,
connect with that character and be with that character. And that's what I try to do with the meditation. We enter the story. So I'm not just doing a random visualization. I'm really thinking about the stories connected to creation and to the land that we're connecting with. So, for instance, when I said about the well, I related it to Conla's well, but also then it can be personified to whatever. What I spoke about this last time, didn't I? Um, to whatever works for you. But I mean, this is just my own personal experience and from what I've learned from my teachers. So, yeah,
yeah. Well, you've got a lot of wisdom there, because you've been doing a long time, and you have been doing this with a lot of people. So I was wondering if there's any way, because we all know that it's very good for children to use their imagination, use their visualization. And when I was at school, we used to have story time, where we all sat, probably you too, Jonathon, most of us here, we sat on the carpet or we put our heads in our arms on the desk and we listened to a story. But again, we're being told a story, whereas the way you do this really encourages the visualization. Do you do yours for children as well?
I have done storytelling for children. I can't say I'm doing it a lot. And sometimes I do events where it's adults and children. My other day job, so to speak, is I work with children mainly in care. So I don't so much do the imaginative stuff, but they're in the woods, and it's just for in that respect, it's just for me, when people are in the woods and in nature, they're away from the other traumas and they're not being judged. And I think that's, just the simple things of like robins hopping around near you. You're not judged, are you? You're all in it together, so to speak. So yeah, I have done storytelling for children. It's not one of my main things I do, if you want, but I definitely.
I just wondered, as this is what you do, how you would like to see this sort of develop. If this could be taken into schools, if this was a possibility now, that we took that these myths and legends that we know are real could actually be taken into schools. Is that something you could see? I mean, we have forest schools in England at the moment, don't we? But if this was to be developed to come out of the old sort of school, how it's very sort of trying to put, round into square holes and so on, if we could come around and really expand and take this out, do you think that could be something that could be done in the future?
Yeah, I mean, there are oral storytellers that I know doing that.
Okay.
And I think, I mean, sorry, I don't know if I'm pronouncing the name correctly. Shoba, is that Shuba? She asked, "How do we own our stories?" And I think that for me is the next stage, is allowing people to make their own story and their own script. So for instance, when we're talking about the creation myth, or the invasions of Ireland, actually, when you go into your land, what is the impressions and feelings? What is the story of your land, of your patch? So I suppose if a child's in a school and they're not outdoors, what is their world? When they close their eyes, or when they put on, I don't know, a blanket over them or whatever, what are the stories that are naturally coming? So instead of, I mean, I did use a lot of names and forms because I particularly like words, but actually, what does the wind look like to you? I said Angus Org, which those people that know the legends, they'll instantly think of what he looks like. But what does the wind look like to you? What if it moved into a form? So yeah, I think this could be done a lot in schools. And as I say, there are traditional storytellers going in schools, but I think some tellers will see them as stories and entertainment, and obviously other tellers will see it as a deeper meaning and as tradition. So I think that again can vary depending, because I think we can only give the experience of what we believe ourselves. If I don't know, if I'm sitting there guiding you in a meditation, I'm thinking, well, this is just a story, it's just imagination. I think that would lessen the experience, personally. Yeah. Does that?
Oh yeah, it definitely
Yeah,
comes across
yeah.
in the frequency you're emanating, that there's obviously a belief there.
I think we have teachers,
And it could be linked into their artwork too.
Sorry, Mary.
No, go ahead, Jonathan. I was just saying, I was just going to say it could be linked into the children's artwork as well. I used to work in a school with children, and sometimes we used to read them stories and get them to draw what they, or paint the images that they got from the story. But if they were doing their own story, if they were taken outside into a wooded area and they had to write their own story and then go back in and paint it, how complete that would be for the child, to be able, yeah.
Kathleen Matthews, who I've learned a lot from, I think she wrote a book, and I think it was Diane Fortune that she quoted, and she said, what we contemplate we touch, but what we connect with our imagination, we become one with. So I think the imagination is such a strong, powerful tool that we kind of dismiss more as we get older. And at the end of the day, original thought, imagination is what's brought us out of the caves, if you want, and the woods. I don't know if that was a good thing or not, really, but but that's what's evolved. That's what's made us evolve, isn't it? Not by thinking in the box, but thinking out of the box and
Yeah,
creating new
yeah,
things.
the creativity.
Yeah.
How have you see it changed in all the years you've been doing this, Jonathon? How do you see it change? So are people having more, do people have sort of mystical experiences? Have you got more interest in this as time has gone on? Do you think you're reaching more people? Is there a consciousness shift that you've noticed?
That's a very good question. And I'm going to think about it rather than just, answer. Yeah, I think there is a change. I think people are definitely more open and, yeah, it's an interesting question that. Is there a consciousness shift? I think there is most definitely a consciousness shift. I think people are changing, are more open. But there's something else and I can't quite put my words to it.
Jonathon, you have lots of experience in divine love devotion, in the bhakti yoga that you've done in the past. I'm just wondering whether you're bringing in some of those elements into your presentation. You're certainly bringing in a lot of that divinity of the elemental nature, which is what I love. You're bringing in some of the original words, the deities, which are very important. There is power in that pronunciation. And I'm just wondering, is there a correlation?
Did you know that I did bhakti yoga then?
You had mentioned it briefly in the last time you were here, and I've done some in my past, so we share in common.
So, yeah, I'm very happy to talk about my journey. Yeah, just to finish, sorry, I'll come back to that, Alan. Just to think with Laura, yes, I think things are changing and moving, but I sometimes think that it's moving so fast, we're almost not grounding ourselves in it. And I think there's some just such beautiful people that are coming to groups, and I'm connecting with lovely people, and there's a real good core people coming about. But I do feel society that there is this rapid change happening at the moment. I think we all desperately need to stay grounded in that. I think I mean, I might be wrong. I'm not, I'm not the oracle, but I feel like there's this whirlwind energy at the moment, and I think that we have to. And for me, it's connecting to which connects with what Alan's saying as well. For me, it's connecting with a set tradition rather than going off into too many realms that can hold us. And when I say set tradition, I mean the tradition that you choose and that connects with you. I don't mean that in a purist sense. How can it be purist? I'm a English man, of mixed. I've probably got Irish, German, French. I don't mean it in a purist sense. I just mean what resonates with you. But I think grounding is really an important part of that. Does that make sense, Laura? Yeah.
Yes, totally. What you're saying is do a spiritual practice that resonates with you to keep you grounded, and we all need that in these times.
It feels like there's this, what for me, and this could be pure projection of what I'm going through, I do feel the energy is a bit of a whirlwind at the moment.
Yes.
Like there's a lot of change, even though we're shut down, there's a lot of change as well. And I think finding good teachers and good people like yourselves is so important. But moving on to Alan, because I haven't got a huge amount of time. Yes, I didn't. Yes, definitely. So my path, I actually got into Hinduism. Well, actually, it's not true. I've always been connected to the pagan path, what we call the pagan path in this country. So connecting with trees and plants and the seasons. But for me, there was, and now I've discovered more the Irish stuff, which Mary knows about. I do feel there's a very devotional side in that. But I personally found here in England, when I went to certain events, I felt like there wasn't that real prayerful devotion. And that side of it isn't important to some people, and we're all different. I'm not saying you have to have that, but for me, I'm very prayerful. I love that element. I love that devotional element. And that's when I discovered my teacher, Kathleen Matthews, because she wrote a book called Celtic Devotional. So that really, for me, knitted together that kind of connection with the earth and also the devotional side, which I think is very present in the Irish mythology and in other mythologies too. But I think it is that heart connection for me that's so important, not an intellectual knowledge or, yeah, just that heart connection. You know, if we don't pronounce it quite correctly, if we're not quite, you know, there are missing bits. In fact, I went on a workshop not long ago, and the chap there said the fragments between the stories that have been lost are actually really good learning curves, because they're the bits we can meditate on and learn from, and you know, obtain our own knowledge from. So for me, it's quite prayerful, and that definitely has an influence. So I went to a lot of fire ceremonies. I went to a couple that are Brahmins run, and I saw how the Hindus were worshipping in that way, and they had a very set program of chanting and meditating and so on. And then I discover that the Indo-European is very much, you know, part of particularly the Irish tradition, which I have a particular affinity of. I think you've noticed that. And like the Veda and the Filii, the poets in Ireland, and the Brahmins and the Vedas and so on, there's quite a lot of overlap there, and that sort of devotion. And when you look at the Celtic poets, they were doing this. They were memorizing and chanting, and this incredible knowledge which still goes on in India today. So yeah, for me, devotion is quite a big part of my practice. Yeah.
You're bringing those elements into your presentation. It's quite apparent. And I'd love to see some of the children make the leelas, or the divine plays, as they do in many of the ashrams, and celebrate and pay homage to the elementals, the trees and the whatnot. That would be wonderful to see.
Yeah. Thank you, Alan. Thank you.
Yeah, the ceremonies and the rituals, and you know, like you're doing, are beautiful and very grounding. But I understand totally what you and Alan are saying. Without the prayer, you haven't got that celestial connection. You've got all the grounding, haven't you? But you need the heaven and earth connection, because that's what it's all about ultimately.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I think people, I mean, this is why I've actually been quite excited about Zoom, because people do pick up energetically and feeling wise what's going on. And I've really, because I resisted it to start with, if I'm to be honest. And then when I started running groups and online, and I saw that people were still experiencing that, and I was experiencing that, and I thought, this is great, the way it's being picked up. It feels like the internet's become like a network in the woodland of mycorrhizal fungi or something. I find that quite exciting. So we can use this technology in such positive ways, can't we? Which is great. Yeah.
Oh yeah, very much so. I know Jonathon needs to get away. Is anybody else got any more questions for him before we let him go?
I just want to say thank you. Thank you very much for coming on again and being with us. And the only thing I want to say is this is so important, because as we're going back to natural living, we actually have to practice that type of interaction with the other realms. And like all of you said, you know, we are coming back to acknowledging our own knowingness, and we are not really taught how to do that. And this is the way, by going back to the stories as they're told before. And then once we get into the flow of that, we can then start bringing our own stories forward and find our way back to that natural living. So thank you very much.
I think for me also, it's knowing that our spirituality, what we're practicing, is very real. It is our roots. We are indigenous people of the land, and whether we're in modern I don't know, New York, London, me in Brighton, or whether we're in the countryside, it's not mimicking people that live in the wilds. This is very real, and this is something we can all obtain. And I think there's too much, oh, this is a bit controversial maybe, but I think it's so important that the indigenous people and, people around the world are respected, but also that we can also respect ourselves and know that we can have that, and not feel that culturally we're not adept to do that. I think it's important we own that it's just as real as what early people are doing. This is our heart, this is what we do. Yeah,
It's almost an honoring of who we are
yeah,
as our ancestors, right?
yeah.
So we have to learn that way again.
Yeah.
We have to remember it. We have to
Yeah.
practice it. That's the only way, like you say, of owning and claiming who we truly actually are.
It's a lovely way of putting it, Martina. Yeah.
Well, tell us a way to get hold of you. And you're doing online walk with trees, I think, or you do.
You seem to have gone very online, which is an absolute mystery to me. But it's happened, and I'm quite enjoying it, to be honest. There are other elements I don't enjoy about it, but the actual groups and stuff I do. So that's my website, walkwithtrees.com, so you can always have a look at that. Woodland Bard School, it'll probably come up as well. So it's Walk with Trees, not Walking. There's a lovely book that's been written called Walking with Trees by Glennie Kindred, but my site is Walk with Trees. And yeah, get in touch, and from there you can contact me, look at what I do, and yeah. I've been a very staunch environmentalist. I've grown a lot of trees and plants, and I still do environmental education. But I've got to say, I do think the care of the soul is so important and so needed today, and I feel like my work is going very much that way, and I think that's very beautiful to be involved in that too. So although it is important we're in this world and we're doing actions, I think soul care is so overlooked, and I think it's nice to have people doing that too. So yeah, thank you. Always a pleasure to be at this group, and yeah.
Well, we hope you'll come on again sometime, Jonathon. Yeah. And it's been wonderful having you here. Thank you for all the wisdom you've brought today and the wonderful meditation. And thanks very much for coming on. We do really appreciate it.
No, thank you. And yeah.
Thank you, Jonathon.
See you again.
Yes.
Thanks, Jonathon.
Should be.
If anyone else, if Jonathon I know has to go, but if anybody, it's up to you, we can stay and carry on talking. I don't know what the time is, 8:30. Or if we're all ready, if we've all had enough.
I think I'll go, Laura.
Okay. I think we're all ready to pack it up, because and just enjoy, carry on with that energy that we've had, Let's not talk it into the ground, just perceive it and actually dream with it. Use it for your dream space tonight and see what happens.
Dream. Thanks,
Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Thanks very much.
Thank
See you next week.
Thanks, next week.
Lovely comments as well in the chat. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathon. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.